So, how did the meeting at Amazon go today, and sort of what was achieved by it?
Yeah, look, as you may know, Amazon is investing over $7 billion into New Zealand for cloud-based services. Now, that is an incredible investment, but as you can imagine, they need skills and talent, and they're looking to build that domestically. So quite a significant conversation around their goal of training and supporting 100,000 New Zealanders into the jobs that they'll need in the future.
So it was, they're building this sort of infrastructure.
Cloud-based services, yep.
But they need the people
to
sort of man it, and so it was about what New Zealand government can do to facilitate.
A significant conversation around the fact that they've already calculated they need 100,000 people with a specific skill set. They're already starting to roll out training programs in New Zealand to provide that skill set, and so strong conversation around what we can do to support them in that work, which serves us really well as well.
So what can you do? What is it that the government can do to facilitate this?
Part of it's making sure that people know how to access the training programs. They're already working with education providers. We had a conversation around making sure that they're also connected to MSD. They have a strong track record of working with those who have, for instance, been possibly out of work or need to retrain to seek new job opportunities. And so making sure that where we know how to find people who are seeking those opportunities, connecting them into the program.
New Zealand's unemployment level is at record lows. Where are these people going to come from?
New Zealand's unemployment record is historically low. You're absolutely right. But at the same time, we do still have those who, for instance, may be seeking work, who are working through the Ministry of Social Development, or who may have been out of the workforce for some time, and retraining opportunities will be critical.
Was there any discussion today about the Christchurch call,
Yes.
any further developments?
Yes, yeah. Look, as you can imagine, with all of the tech companies, part of the conversation we're having is about the progress we've made on the Christchurch call to action. Things are vastly different now than they were after our experience of March 15. We now have something called the Crisis Response Protocol, which means that straight away, if there is a live stream event, such as those we've seen recently, the tech companies work together to make sure they're sharing information to hasten the speed of content being removed, but also to stop it being shared. That didn't exist at the time of our terrorist attack. But also, we also discussed the need for extra work on issues like algorithms and the research required there too.
Did you discuss the Buffalo shootings in terms of that first time, that those mechanisms were supposed to work and how it actually did work?
It has been used prior to Buffalo, so it wasn't the first experience of using these mechanisms, but it was probably the first time where the attempts to share the content were quite sophisticated. And so as a result of that, we are seeing the areas where we need to do a bit more work because different techniques are being used to share the information. You see that users on Twitch, for instance, or people who had perhaps viewed the content, downloading it or preserving it and then reposting or relinking in different ways and often in forums that, for instance, aren't part of the work that we've been doing.
I was going to say, other platforms that actually need to be included now, has it gone past the original group of Christchurch call?
It's all still relevant. I mean, obviously, Twitch, it's the place where this particular attacker chose to use the platform, and of course via Amazon you have that connection to the Christchurch call.
Can other platforms be pulled into the Christchurch call?
We are still bringing in additional providers into the Christchurch call. Keep in mind, the Christchurch call is not just about the issue of people live streaming horrific attacks. It's also about what we can do to prevent the radicalisation of individuals towards violent extremism and terrorism. And people seek to do that or are exposed to that in a range of different platforms, and that's why the Christchurch call is a quite broad piece of work.
And so you made quite a big statement at Harvard about calling tech companies out quite directly with what you wanted them to do. How have they responded to that message when you've spoken to them?
Well, certainly from what I heard today, they are absolutely aware of what we've asked. And the question isn't a debate about whether or not this is work that we need to do. Everyone agrees. We don't want to see violent extremism. We don't want to see acts of terrorism these are either fueled or seeded by people's engagement online. So there's agreement on what we need to do, and I do believe that there's also agreement about the tricky issues we need to tackle.
So did they make any commitments to you?
Well, of course, Amazon is already a member of the Christchurch Call to Action. They are already part of some of the ongoing work we're doing around issues like algorithms. So really now it's about just demonstrating that progress.
Brad Smith and Mayor's referred to you saying that there was more to do.
Yep.
Have you talked to him about the
We meet
up on algorithms?
We meet tomorrow, and so that'll be a chance for us to expand a little bit more on what the next steps are. But Microsoft has been a strong partner in our Christchurch Call to Action work. We have talked a bit about the extra research that's required to fully understand algorithmic outcomes, what's happening as a result of these processes that are often very complex. Now, when we know what the outcomes are, that means we can think more about the contribution that they may be making to sometimes the radicalisation of people.
Today,
You've also got a meeting on Twitter tomorrow. How's their response?
I actually met with them this morning.
Oh, you did?
Yep.
So
Everything I've said applies.
Right. And what was the tenor of the meeting in terms of their responsiveness, their willingness to do?
Yeah,
more
really,
with it?
really similar. So Twitter actually has a couple of research projects. I've partnered with New Zealand-based universities on this issue of algorithmic outcomes, because as you will have seen from some of what they've released to date, they've been sharing some of what the outcomes of some of the processes they have, but of course are also open about the fact that they can't actually answer the question as to how they're getting to that endpoint of those particular algorithmic outcomes. So that's why that they acknowledge we won't be able to fix the issue until we fully understand how it's operating.
And Brad,
today you also met with Governor Newsom,
Yeah.
and you appeared to get along very well. How did that meeting go today?
Oh, as you could see, there's a lot in common between the Governor of California and New Zealand in terms of what we're trying to do on issues that relate particularly to climate. We did talk about a few issues of the day, as you can imagine, and California in particular has a different set of gun laws here than what you'll see elsewhere, and so that was a topic of conversation as well.
just on the gun laws, just on the gun laws. I mean, you had Governor Newsom, Brad Smith, a number of other people have praised New Zealand and your government for what they've done. However, if we look back, what's happening in Auckland right now, there's been a spate of shooting this week. Have we actually fixed the problem?
First thing you'll hear me constantly acknowledge, we've moved on one part of our problem, but that does not mean that the problem has evaporated. Not at all. And that's why you'll see that we are continuing with, for instance, the important implementation of the gun register. The police themselves acknowledge that this will be an incredibly important part of making progress on gun issues in New Zealand. Second, of course, is making sure that our police themselves are well equipped to deal with what we've seen recently, which is a spike in gang tensions.
Does that mean arming police?
No, it means things like the firearm prevention orders as a tool to try and remove firearms from those who are committing criminal acts. It means tactical response so that the police are well prepared for what they are facing day to day, and we've put millions into making sure that the police have the tactical response, both kit and training that they need. And we have more police than we have ever had. All of those things are part of our response to these issues.
And just on behalf.
And then I might just finish with these last two if I can.
Whew.
It's been a long day.
Nanaima Mahuta has been accused by Winston Peters of being too slow to respond to China's growing influence in the Pacific. Do you still have confidence in her?
Absolutely.
And
I think if you asked our counterparts in the Pacific, you'll hear that there is a very strong relationship between not only New Zealand but personally with our Foreign Minister Nanaima Mahuta.
And Australia's new Foreign Minister is in the Pacific right now, securing Australia's interests. What are we doing?
Oh, well, of course, New Zealand is not starting new relationships. Of course, as a government, we've been walking alongside our Pacific neighbours on some of our challenges for a number of years. And even during COVID, when we couldn't meet face to face, we continued that contact. And as soon as it was possible, Minister Mahuta, Minister Hinare, they've both been in Fiji. They've met with the leaders of Tuvalu, Tonga, and of course, Samoa, still unable to visit, but we continue those relationships. New Zealand is not rebuilding, we're continuing a relationship.
In very practical terms, with the agreement with California and communication with the likes of Governor Newsom, actually seeing more EVs, the supply, is that going to make any difference and get EVs or hybrids into New Zealand more quickly?
This is the potential that we wish to explore. You heard Governor Newsom himself talk about the fact that California is a powerhouse when it comes to EV production. The question we raised is, as part of the agreement we've signed, we've laid the groundwork for partnership, and it includes looking into the issue of production and manufacturing. New Zealand does need more supply. It's an issue I've raised when I was in Japan. It's an issue I'm raising here now too. We have clear goals, now we need partners to help us deliver on them.
One last one on Twitter, if I please. Thank you so much. I'm only here for a week. Look,
You're not as jet lagged as the rest of us.
That's fair. I'll keep it quick then. Look, Twitter might have a new owner soon. You've met with those execs today. They've given you some assurances. What assurance do you have that they would maintain that work on algorithms and access to the platform should they have a new owner who's raised some concerns about access to free speech?
Well, the first thing I'd say is that actually we've had that ongoing partnership with a number of the signatories to the Christchurch call, and you can already see Twitter with its research projects with universities in New Zealand is already responding to the calls that we've made to work on these really tricky issues. For us, we will continue that relationship regardless of the ownership structure or the ownership of any of these entities. What's important to us is that they recognise the issue and uphold the goals that they have signed up to as part of the Christchurch call.
You commit to tweet